In a single night, 100 lives were extinguished, not by sword or pestilence, but by the will of a queen who sought to transcend humanity itself. Shemuramat, known to legend as Semiramis, stood at the heart of Babylon, her ambition cloaked in the guise of maternal devotion. Yet what mother's love demands the blood of 100 innocents, their bodies arranged in a spiral of death beneath a moonless sky? This was no mere act of tyranny, but a calculated descent into a realm where divinity and monstrosity blur. Behind the grandeur of her throne lies a truth so unsettling that history sought to bury it, chiseling away her deeds from stone. What drove a queen to orchestrate the most methodical mass sacrifice of the ancient world? A tale of power, love, and unspeakable horror awaits, preserved in whispers and forbidden tablets. For those drawn to the shadows of history, where truth is more disturbing than myth, consider subscribing to uncover more secrets lost to time. In the shadow of Babylon's towering ziggurats, circa 810 BCE, a city pulsed as the heart of the ancient world, its streets alive with the commerce of empires and the whispers of gods. Here, amidst opulence and ambition, ruled Shemuramat, known to posterity as Semiramis, a queen regent whose name would echo through time not for conquest alone, but for a darkness that defies comprehension. Widowed with a young son, Adad Nirari III, clinging to a precarious throne, she governed a realm teetering on the edge of chaos. Rival generals, foreign armies, and scheming nobles circling like vultures. Yet behind her regal facade lay a mind consumed by a singular purpose: to secure her son's future, no matter the cost. What began as maternal devotion spiraled into a ritual that would stain Babylon's soul. This narrative unveils a tale, not merely of power, but of a queen who dared to breach the veil between mortal and divine, leaving a city cursed and a legend too horrific for history to fully embrace. Yet the true horror was only beginning to unfold. In the shadowed halls of Babylon's palace, 6 months before the spring equinox of 810 BCE, a plan of chilling precision unfolded. Queen Shemuramat, known to legend as Semiramis, set in motion a selection process as methodical as it was malevolent. Across the empire's teeming slave markets, royal assessors combed through thousands of captives to identify 100 young men, each aged between 16 and 22. These were no ordinary conscripts. They were chosen for their physical perfection, bodies unmarred, teeth flawless, even birthmark patterns scrutinized with an almost ritualistic zeal, as recorded on clay tablets with cold exactitude. Crucially, they were orphans, severed from familial ties, their absence unlikely to stir questions or vengeance. Among them was Theron, a 19-year-old slave whose fleeting hope of salvation masked a grim fate. For 3 months these men resided in a secluded wing of the palace, treated not as prisoners, but as princes. Their diet was strictly controlled: grains and herbs, subtly infused with psychoactive compounds, sharpened their senses while dulling their suspicions. Daily baths in oils imported from Egypt, scented with Arabian incense, cleansed their bodies in a parody of sanctity. They were taught to read and write, their lessons framed as preparation for divine service. Tablets, unearthed by archaeologists, preserve their words. Letters brimming with gratitude, penned to a queen they believed had chosen them for greatness. Theron himself wrote of his honor, unaware that he and his companions were not being elevated, but refined, their blood purified for a purpose unspoken. This was no act of benevolence. It was a calculated preparation, a slow marination of souls for what occult scholars later termed a transformation ritual. The men, basking in their newfound luxury, could not see the altar awaiting them, nor the queen, whose ambition would redraw the boundaries of mortality itself. Yet beneath the opulence, a darker truth was stirring, one that would soon plunge Babylon into a nightmare from which it could not wake. As the spring equinox dawned in 810 BCE, under a sky bereft of moonlight, Babylon's royal chamber became a theatre of unspeakable horror. Queen Shamauramat, cloaked in the mantle of Semiramis, commenced a ritual that would sever her from humanity. The chamber, vast as a temple, had been transformed. Obsidian tiles, etched with symbols that seared the eyes, lined the floor. Walls bore pre-human scripts, older than the city's gods, and a black granite altar stood where her bed once lay. Each of the 100 chosen men, meticulously prepared, entered in turn, their minds clouded by religious ecstasy, induced by months of psychoactive herbs and ritual baths. Theron, the 19-year-old slave, recorded in hidden tablets the methodical precision of their fate, 6 minutes per soul, a rehearsed dance of death. Semiramis intoned words in a tongue predating human speech, her voice weaving a spell that held the victims willing, even eager, for their supposed ascension. Yet what transpired defied mortal comprehension. The air grew frigid, frost forming on obsidian, despite Babylon's desert heat. Shadows writhed, casting winged shapes unbound by light. Blood from the fallen did not pool, but flowed in defiance of gravity, tracing patterns toward the altar. By the 20th victim, Semiramis's form began to shift. Her eyes gleamed with a predator's luminescence. Her movements, fluid as water, no longer wholly human. Theron, spared by a rare genetic immunity to the paralytic poison derived from an extinct Mesopotamian plant, lay motionless among the corpses, witnessing a transformation that would haunt his remaining days. Outside, guards heard voices not of this world, harmonizing in a chorus where only the queen should have stood. By the 50th sacrifice, the chamber pulsed with an otherworldly presence, as if the veil between realms had torn. When dawn broke, Semiramis emerged, her gaze inducing vertigo, her voice carrying harmonics no human throat could produce. The 100, save Theron, lay dead in a perfect spiral, their lives fuel for a queen who had become something else entirely. Yet this night of blood was but the prelude to a curse that would consume Babylon itself. In the wake of Semiramis's unholy ritual, in 810 BCE, Babylon, once the jewel of the ancient world, became a city accursed. The transformation of a queen into something beyond mortal had torn a wound in the fabric of reality, and the consequences spread like a miasma. Animals fled en masse. Cattle shattered gates, sacred temple beasts gnawed through cages, and even rats marched in eerie columns toward the city's limits. Those unable to escape succumbed to what scribes termed spiritual exhaustion, their lifeless bodies collapsing without mark of disease. From the palace outward, vegetation perished in precise concentric circles, advancing 13 cubits daily, transforming ancient date palms and the fabled hanging gardens into cascades of ash. The Euphrates, lifeblood of Babylon, defied nature itself, flowing backward for 3 days, its waters thick as oil, cold enough to burn, and bearing grotesque relics, fish with too many mouths, stones that whispered in the night. More chilling were the apparitions. The 100 sacrificed youths, their throats slit, began to manifest, first to those complicit in the ritual, then to citizens unconnected to the palace. Silent, accusatory, they stood in corners, visible only in peripheral glances, their appearances tracing the spiral pattern of their deaths. Nightmares synchronized across the city, with thousands waking at precisely 3:33 a.m., haunted by visions of a dark chamber and broken boys. Objects moved without cause, mimicking the ritual's spiral. Cold spots froze water in Babylon's desert heat. Fires erupted where ritual oils had been stored. Trade routes withered as merchants shunned a city where animals died and dreams turned to terror. Foreign ambassadors wrote of a hive-like palace, its staff moving in unnatural unison, their individuality erased by Semiramis' will. The economy faltered, and enemy nations circled, sensing weakness in a city forsaken by life itself. Babylon had become a wound in the world, its very existence a testament to the queen's transgression. Yet as the city crumbled under this supernatural plague, a desperate alliance of priests began to form, determined to confront the abomination their queen had become. In the autumn of 810 BCE, as Babylon languished under its curse, a clandestine assembly of priests dared to challenge the abomination that was once Queen Shamarumat. United across Mesopotamia's temples, from Marduk to Ishtar, and joined by foreign mystics from Egypt and the Indus Valley, they formed a shadow council, communicating through coded dreams to evade Semiramis' mind-warping voice. Their evidence was as unearthly as their foe. Theron's testimony, preserved on hidden tablets, spoke of her transformation. Crystallized blood patterns and warped river water bore witness to cosmic crimes. Oracle bones cracked in accusatory patterns, and sacred flames burned black, indicting a queen who had breached divine law. Luring her to the great ziggurat, they exploited her love for her son, Adad-nirari, who summoned her under the guise of a blessing. Wards of meteoric iron and primordial salt bound her, yet her presence warped reality. Shadows lashed at judges, and her voice shattered pottery, felling 7 priests with bleeding ears. The trial was no mere legal proceeding, but a metaphysical war. The ghosts of the 100 victims materialized, their silent gazes shaking Semiramis' resolve, while the spectre of her husband, Shamshi-Adad V, denounced her corruption. Pronounced guilty of deicide and soul consumption, she faced not death, but spiritual annihilation by 7 sacred fires. Flames of Shamash, Gibel, and Anu, kindled on a pyre of celestial woods. The burning lasted 3 days, her screams weaving prophecies that drove scribes to madness. Yet when the flames subsided, no ashes remained, only crystalline bones, black as obsidian, warm as flesh, whispering secrets to those who dared approach. Attempts to destroy them failed. The Euphrates rejected them. The earth bled where they were buried, and fragments reassembled with unholy will. In desperation, priests sealed the remains in 7 meteoric iron containers, inscribed with protective runes, a temporary prison for an entity that defied death. Babylon had judged its queen, but in doing so, unleashed a legacy that would haunt the ages. Yet the true horror lay not in her punishment, but in what her transformation had wrought upon the world. The tale of Shamarumat, known as Semiramis, is no mere legend, but a shadow cast across history's annals, warning of the abyss that awaits when love and power intertwine, unchecked. In her quest to secure her son's throne, she traded humanity for a monstrous divinity, sacrificing 100 souls and cursing Babylon to a fate worse than ruin. Her trial and execution, meant to restore cosmic order, merely transformed her into crystalline relics that whisper still, hidden in 7 unknown sanctuaries. Archaeological fragments, defaced stele, suppressed graves, bear witness to a truth too horrific for history to fully embrace. Semiramis' story reveals a chilling truth. Even the purest maternal devotion can birth monstrosity when fused with forbidden knowledge. Civilizations rise and fall, yet the allure of absolute power persists, whispering to those who would justify any act for love or ambition. Her legacy endures not in triumph, but in the silent dread of bones that grow in the dark, a reminder that some evils outlast even the gods. For those who seek the shadows, where history hides its truths, consider subscribing to unearth more tales of humanity's darkest hours.